And here with me now, Valencia Johnson, a former senior advisor to Biden's 2020 campaign and now chief impact officer of 1063 West Broad, and Meet the Press contributor Marc Short, former chief of staff to Vice President Mike Pence. Welcome both. So a lot to chew over. It's not surprising that the two campaigns are going at each other. Trump in the garbage truck, was, of course, the most memorable visual of all of this. But Harris is jumping on the women's comments. And they clearly feel, Valencia, that if they can get all of their women out there and communicate to women, which they're trying to do also in their grassroots efforts, that it's a secret ballot. So they can go against their husbands or partners if that's the issue in some red states, perhaps, or some other places. But that women don't have to tell anyone how they're voting. And they think that if they can get all the women out, that then they can squeak through what is essentially a tied race.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, there's reporting that shows in polling of young women, abortion is rising to the top issue. It's also, we're hearing from different reporters who have actually talked to some of these women about the fact that they want to vote for Harris. They can't convince their husbands to vote for Harris. And so they're going to go into the ballot box and cancel out his vote, right? And so I think what Vice President Harris is doing and the Harris campaign is doing is using a message that actually works. This is actually empowering women, telling women you can actually stand up for your rights. Donald Trump is saying that he is going to protect women, even though he said that women don't want him to say that because they've seen the policies that he supports. And on the contrast is that a vote for Vice President Harris is a vote to restore reproductive freedom. It's a vote to expand access to opportunity for women. And so that message, I think, is moving a lot of women, especially some who don't want to vote for Donald Trump.
Mark, certainly in this last week and at the RNC, Trump really seemed to be doubling down on the appeal to men. The Hulk Hogan, the Madison Square Garden rally, the rhetoric there. And I'm wondering, what do you think is more damaging in everything that's evolved on the garbage front, if you could say it, the Biden gaffe and all the rest? What is more damaging, the Madison Square Garden event, which was so lewd and vulgar and offensive to perhaps a lot of voters, or the Joe Biden gaffe, which was, compared to what Hillary Clinton did in 2016, calling Trump supporters deplorables?
Yeah, Andrea, I don't know how much of it really makes the difference at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. I honestly think that so much of this is baked in that not many voters are still undecided. I do think that Biden's comments do resurrect the Hillary Clinton comments about the deplorables. But I also feel like there isn't as much actually about substance right now at the end. It's really a style campaign difference.
Well, does the Puerto Rican comment,
it's not helpful, Andrew. Don't get me wrong.
No, does that move votes in Pennsylvania, for instance, where you've got 500,000, Latino and particularly 300,000 Puerto Ricans?
I think after 8 years on the national stage, most people have made up their mind about Donald Trump. I think probably the one it's least helpful to is, honestly, Senator Scott in Florida, because there's a large Puerto Rican population there, and that's not what he wants to be focused on the last week of his campaign. But I'm not so sure how much it makes a difference at the presidential level. I'm not telling you it's helpful because you don't want to be commenting on that in the last week. You want to be driving home your message. But I don't know how many people are really undecided still.
And, Valencia, regarding the women's vote and the gender gap, I mean, it's just that we've never seen a gender gap like this. It really is striking. And there are a couple of cross currents here. It's largely Dobbs that has energized women's voters. But I've been doing some reporting, and I was talking to an expert in Wichita, Kansas, at Wichita State, an academic, who was pointing out that there are a lot of trends here. Right now, there's a growing trend of more women are college-educated voters than men. And the college-educated voters tend to be more democratic than not. So, and there's also trends among young men under 35 or younger men under 35 to be more populist, more conservative, more concerned about losing what they have, feeling more vulnerable. So all of these trends are coming together at the same time.
Yeah, and then you have this culture that Donald Trump has brought into our society, this toxic masculinity, right, that is capitalizing on this
Mark is laughing because...
manosphere. And listen, I'm listening to these conversations that are happening, right, this bravado type of display of masculinity on top of some of these trends as well, which is also why you see Donald Trump doubling down with some of that rhetoric and going to the podcast.
He thinks it works, Mark.
He does.
That's what the whole RNC was about. That's what Madison Square Garden was about.
The reality is there's actually more women that vote than men, and particularly in some of these swing districts, suburban America, that I think it's probably counterproductive. I don't necessarily view the masculinity as toxic. But I think that's the loaded terminology. But I do think that if that's a strategy, that we're just going to try to drive up the male vote, I think it's disadvantage to him because there's actually more women voters.
But I do think
and the polling shows he's suffering there.
I do think, though, this toxicity that's coming out, the groping comments, the, daddy's going home to spank the little girl that Tucker Carlson is saying, that all of these things that Trump is saying, on top of women are becoming more educated as their rights are being taken away. I understand why the gender gap is being widened. It has widened, and it's going to be something we have to deal with post this election.
Let me just ask you both a final yes/no question. Do you both see the battleground states are basically tied within the margin of error right now going into Election Day?
I do see them tied right now, but...
Mark?
Yeah, I think that Trump has solidified his lead in the Sun Belt, but I still think she has the advantage in the blue wall states. And I think something that's missing in some of the data right now, Andrea, is people are enthusiastic about the Republican turnout early vote, but it's against what baseline? In 2020, they were told it's fraudulent to vote early. So it's going to be better. And I think there's more evidence that there's Republicans crossing over than Democrats crossing over. So you're looking at Republican numbers, but I'm not so sure that tells a full story right now.
It's not necessarily a Trump vote.
Right.
Got it.
The only poll that matters is the one on Election Day.